This is Track Talk, and we're back with a commented game of 1830. Before we jump into the game, I just want to make a quick channel note and just say that we will be trying to get some additional games into the queue here in terms of variety. So I'm specifically looking at 49 and 46 for one of our next streams. The problem is that we've been doing a lot of 1830, which is great, but it gets a little bit repetitive for me, and I assume for anybody watching. I do like 1889, but many of the games that are played by new players, so they're not super interesting to comment on. And then 1882 is fine, but there aren't a huge volume of games being played, so they end up being a little bit repetitive in terms of the players playing them as well. So anyway, it's all a way of saying that we will get some more variety, but this video we're going to stick to the basics and do a game of 1830. So 8BG will be starting us off. This is a player along with 12th Man Standing that has been featured on the channel in the past. I believe MJ Mill has as well. Crackpot is a player that's been around on 18X Games for a while, but I don't believe has been featured in a video as of yet. So 8BG will start us out and bid on the Mohawk and Hudson. 12th Man takes the Camden and Amboy. MJ Mill joining him on the Camden and Amboy, leaving the D&H open for Crackpot. Next round in the auction, and we will see a quick pull from APG. He has a private basically at face on the Mohawk, so hoping to push things along. Unfortunately, the Champlain in St. Lawrence is blocking him, so we may see 12th Man try to extend this, although it's really not the end of the world for him to get the Champlain for face and then fight for the Camden and Amboy. It does help Crackpot and APG with cheap privates, but MJ Mill is the only one that's kind of missing out here. He is happy to extend the auction a little bit, and we'll see if MJ Mill, he's not super incentivized to pull here, I wouldn't say. So he may bid on the D&H. But he does take the Champlain and St. Lawrence, so that will leave him on a contested CNA with the Champlain and St. Lawrence. If he doesn't win the CNA, he's going to be taking the B&O most likely. 8BG, so he has $5 technically behind MJ Mill, so I guess he is still in theory in danger of the B&O as well. And 12th Man has no private, but is on the Camden and Amboy, so probably we will see 8BG take this just to secure his private income, and 12th Man will be forced to bid out on the Camden and Amboy, but we'll see how hard APG wants to push for this. So he jumps up to 125, and they are just taking it up. Looks like 12th Man does take it, which means that APG has just bought himself the B&O basically by passing on the Mohawk and Hudson. I think that he could have stood to, go at least one more bid on the Mohawk and Hudson. I think passing here was a little premature. Camden and Amboy. Now the 12th Man has the Mohawk and Hudson. He's not really looking to leave with the Camden and Amboy as well. So that's pretty good news for MJ Mill because he may be able to get the Camden and Amboy for cheaper than he otherwise would have. And they're happy to bid it up. And it only goes for 200. So as we kind of predicted, it's going to be a pretty cheap Camden and Amboy. And MJ Mill bought the Champlain and St. Lawrence, so he will unfortunately be going last in priority, which means that he will not probably have the option of parring the PRR, although the other players left him with the cash to do so in the first stock round. B&O now should be going to 8BG. And oh, sorry. So the B&O auction private actually changed the priority. So MJ Mill will be going second, not last, greatly increasing his chance of starting the PRR. So I missed that little nuance there. 12th Man has the option of taking the PRR. Probably if he's looking out for the table, should do that. And does. And he pars it pretty low. So MJ Mill got a cheap CNA, but will not be able to float in stock round run. Or for that matter, in stock round 2, I don't believe. He'll have 395, and so he will be able to float in stock round 3 if he wants, after 2 rounds of private income. All right, so he may just sit on his cash here and let the other players invest in their companies. Looks like he's going to take the presidency of the CNO. Um, he does have the cash to defend it because he was over 335, so he can buy 5 shares. So if anybody else buys a share in this company, it will float, and he will be, able to operate and potentially buy in his privates. He will be operating after the PRR, so um, he's in a decent position to get a buy-in if someone helps him. NYNH is the third company to float. APG doesn't have the money to float the BNO. Doesn't look like anybody's looking to help him, so he may be just spreading his cash around. Be interesting to see if he helps with the CNO. I think that would be a mistake. He's going to pass for now, and PRR is going to continue to float. All the companies are buying their own shares. APG looks like he's content to sit on his private revenue, at least into the first stock round. Should mean that he's going to be leaving with priority here, although 12th man has invested in the NYNH, so that is floated, meaning that the crackpot actually can just sit on his cash here if he decides to. Crackpot actually helped the CNO float, so I don't like that play. I think that that's being very nice to the CNA player, but that's what he does. So all 3 companies floated now, and APG is going to pass. That does give him priority into the next stock round. PRR running towards Lancaster, buys a single 2-train. CNO now will be laying the double dit and I guess hoping to head over to Pittsburgh early. I don't know that there's a huge rush for him to do this. He'd probably be pretty safe to lay the Chicago track, which is a little more standard, but can't fault him for wanting to get early into Pittsburgh and into that New York area. NYNH did float early, so could be looking to race down into Reading and Allentown, but it does take green in order for him to get there in any reasonable fashion. And he buys just a 1-2 train. And NYNH first action will be laying track to cooperate with the B&M. This may mean that he's looking to buy 3-2 trains here. I hope he doesn't. That's, I think, a bad play. And this is the player that helped the PRR start, or sorry, the CNO start. So maybe some questionable decision making. Looks like he is going for the fast NYNH start. I think that's too risky. The B&O is going to float soon, almost certainly. And these other players are going to be able to help push into the 4s. So I don't think these 2 trains are going to run very quickly or very long. APG still without cash to float the B&O on his own. And buying paying shares of the NYNH that will be running hot as we discussed, at least until the 2s rest. Everybody's looking to hop onto the NYNH. Crackpot buys a PRR. He is at a cert limit in the NYNH, so didn't have another option. This will leave APG with priority if no one else kind of messes it up for him. APG is going to mess it up for himself in some sense by buying paying shares. Nothing wrong with that, but it does cost him priority, so he's going to be on last. He may suffer some stock sales and be unable to float the B&O if he's not careful. So he's going to buy 1 share in each company and leaves it there. This does mean that 12th man is going to have priority. He will be operating after the CNO. So if he buys in the Mohawk and Hudson, the rest of the companies will also basically by definition have the ability to buy their privates. But he may be looking to do that to sell down the PRR and get his first choice in the next company. He lays Lancaster, doesn't token it, and will just be running and paying out. He does buy into the 3s and buys his private. So we may be seeing a fast float storm in the 3rd stock round. CNO continuing to race towards Lancaster and just paying out 40 instead of the possible 70 that could have been running for, but he doesn't care that much because he's about to buy in his privates and be the richest player in the game as a result. So that's interesting. He actually doesn't buy in the CNA. He would not have been able to buy it in for its full value, but he could have if he had just withheld. Well, actually, that's all wrong. He could have bought it in for full value even now. So I'm a little surprised that we don't see him do that. I think he withholds and buys in as private, and that's better than what he did. NYNH bought the 3 trains, so we'll be laying Providence, probably see a token there, and we'll be running for 110. He does buy in his private, so a ton of cash just entered the game. A lot of players will be looking to sell that and float, it looks like. 12th man, he is just going to help the B&O float. He may be hoping to steal the company. Should really be selling down some shares if he's hoping to do that to hurt the liquidity of APG. MJ Mill, happy to buy his own C&O. Crackbot is the first player to sell down. He has the NYNH, so looking to secure the B&M presidency so that he can lay friendly track for both those companies. APG buys a B&O. He's looking to float now that he has gotten some help. And 12th man is not going to give him any other help and will just buy the NYNH. So APG will have to sell out of his companies if he wants to float the B&O. 12th man trashing the NYNH, so he may still be looking to float something, or maybe he's just hoping to get some cash to pressure the B&O. A little bit confused why he would sell that now as opposed to just selling down as he had priority. He could have started the B&M or another company, but he has kind of lost that opportunity now. APG, pretty close to floating the B&O. And 12th man is going to give him the help he needs. May be looking to buy a bunch of these shares and then trash it and then start another company by selling the B&O down, or selling the PRR down. 12th man continuing to invest. If he gets up to 4 shares, BG will be in a little bit danger of losing the presidency because 12th man has the option of selling out of the PRR to take it. So this is, well, he doesn't even give APG the option to make a mistake. I think that if I'm in that position, I hold the 4 shares and, basically say to APG, you either got to sell out of some of your other shares to secure this presidency or I'm going to take it. And I don't think taking the B&O here is bad at all. You would have paid $400 for a $1,000 treasury. So even if he decides to dump it on you, and start a different company, I think that's still a win for you, especially when you own the PRR and can cooperate with the B&O. APG, he is now selling to buy some of these cheap B&O shares. And 12th man, looks like he's just going to try and trash everybody's shares, and then we'll see what company he wants to start. MJ Mill, selling out of the PRR and transitioning over to a cheap NYNH, as it's still going to be running pretty hot, especially if no other companies float. And we do see him continue to trash. And so he's going to force the issue on the B&M. He does have the cash to steal it, but it's going to be hard for Crackbot to defend. He'll have to sell out of most of the other companies, and I haven't done the math, but he may not have enough liquidity really to get up to 5 shares of the B&M. He parted too high. 12th man. So Crackpot is further selling down and hoping to, I guess, defend the presidency. But as we said, he doesn't have a whole lot of shares to sell. He can sell 2 NYNHs for 1 more share, but it's not going to be enough to defend. So they are just racing to the presidency. He is 1 share away, so if he wants to maintain this presidency, he will have to sell the last 2 shares in the NYNH, which does leave that open to being stolen as well. Although it has $0, so it's not the most appealing company. That said, if you can guarantee that those 2s run, you could withhold. It will be in the brown and orange. So there's an option there, but I think that assuming those 2s will survive is a little optimistic. four companies are operating ahead of you, three of whom have four-train money at least. Uh, so I think that probably you should not assume that those twos are going to survive. 12th man will buy another share of the B&M. And Crackpot, does he defend here? He's actually not obligated to until 12th man buys another share. So gonna force him to do that, it looks like. And he does. So now you gotta put your money where your mouth is and either defend or lose it. Looks like he's okay losing it, so 12th man may be selling some of these PRR shares to get the presidency here. He'll have to sell two of them. He is happy to just tank. So he's just going on a killing spree here in terms of taking other people's shares. He still has the cash to start another company, so I guess that's okay. People are sitting very low on liquidity, but there's a ton of shares in the market. So as long as the train rush doesn't go too fast, they may be able to benefit from these market shares. He takes the NYC. NYC is a little bit of a rough company in this game because it's not going to have help from NYNH, and the B&M may be, just rush into Token and Providence and get some good runs while the NYC is stuck running for at most 30 into New Haven. The other players are probably going to be passing while he floats. As I say that, he does sell down an NYNH. And also a B&O. So he's going to trash the B&M a little bit further, perhaps. So he's sitting on a bunch of cash. MJ Mill has sold out of all the companies other than the NYC and can't buy any more of the C&O shares. So not entirely sure where he's hoping to leave his cash for the next operating round. NYC continuing to float, and it is now floated. Will MJ Mill buy any of these shares? Looks like he's going to buy two, and then is he going to sell them or is he just going to sit on them? So he just sits on them. That's a weird decision. There's only one operating round, and he's not going to be... Oh, there are two operating rounds. Sorry, they bought in their privates last time. So he's going to be getting half the payment that he could have gotten from other companies. NYNH buys 2 3 trains. Does he buy a 4? No. We'll leave the dirty work to the B&O to rust the other company's 2s. And B&O does lie south. And he will be forced to buy this first 4. So all of these companies have 3 trains. Nobody's going to be falling back. But they do lose the ability to run for a lot of money. The NYNH is looking much worse than it did last OR. So those 2 trains really didn't pay off for Crackpot because they accelerated the train rush too much. B&M's first operation may be upgrading Providence here. And it's owned by the same president, so no need to token to secure its run, but maybe hoping to run 2 trains. I think that I'd like to hold on to that token, get it into New York, as you know that you're going to be having the option to do it with cooperation with the NYNH. But it does token Providence and buys 2 4 trains, so he is really trying to accelerate this train rush. He needs to be a little bit careful. He is easily going to be a victim of the train rush with 2 4 trains, a 3, and $370 in company cash. So needs to be a little bit careful. The mass buy of 2 trains didn't work out for this player. I guess he's hoping that the 4 trains will be more accommodating. MJ Mill with the C&O looking to lay Pittsburgh and potentially token in Lancaster. He's withholding, still has the CNA that he can buy in, and there's not much time left on these privates with just 1 4 train in the bank. So had the option to buy it in last operating round and missed it, maybe looking to do that soon. He does. So he buys it in for $100. Yeah, I don't know. No comment. PRR now operating, upgrades Lancaster, may see a token there, and we will be seeing that Reading and Allentown token track laid in the next operating round. NYNH concluding the operating set with a upgrade of Boston, so running its 3 train from Providence to Boston, and we will probably see New York upgraded in the near future. He is now running 2 trains in the NYNH, which is smart. He was able to shuffle the trains without losing any runs on the trains and controls basically 90% of the company revenue, so a better way to run the trains than in the B&M. PRR operating first as a result of the other companies falling back on their first round. Probably we'll be seeing a Reading and Allentown. The CNA has been bought in, so could see a Philadelphia, but may want to hope to secure the Reading and Allentown before other companies have the opportunity to. Does lay Philadelphia, and will be running a better 3 run as a result. He is shuffling trains from the NYC. He had the option of doing that in the last operating round, but this operating round he will be losing a run on this train as a result of this. NYC laying into New York, so we'll be eventually able to get into New York, and has no fear of a token there from the B&M, although honestly, usually when I'm playing this game I try to run to New York, not run through New York. I think that tokens in New York are kind of overrated, so I wouldn't care that much if B&M had token there. But next OR will be having a run, this OR unfortunately falling back again. So this is a bad investment for MJ Mill, who trashed everybody's shares and then invested in the NYC only for it to not operate a single time. B&O, first train run from them. They are upgrading Baltimore for a few extra bucks and running their trains, which they pay out. Also has a private buy-in. B&M, do we see the New York upgrade now? Looks like he's content to just sit on his existing run, and will be running out of Boston. NYNH running 2 trains, doesn't have money for an upgrade, so no track it can lay, and running for 170. CNO, maybe they will take the Reading and Allentown since the PRR laid the Philadelphia track for them. Instead, they upgrade Pittsburgh. It's interesting. I mean, on the one hand, there's no company that's going to immediately challenge them for Reading and Allentown, but that's a pretty important track. I would like to see that coming out. Alternatively, upgrading this yellow to mess with the B&O a little bit. And he is withholding into the orange, getting a little bit more company cash. He has all of his shares in the CNO and in the NYC, so he's not going to have very much cash at all into this stock round. He was able to buy in his private, but he only bought in for 100. All right, Crackpot, 2 companies, some cash to invest here, and probably not looking to sell down either of these companies for presidency, so expect him just to be paying shares, which he does with the PRR. APG looking to the B&M. I think that these NYNH shares are looking quite attractive. They're cheap and they are going to be running for a lot, so I'm surprised to see players just letting them sit in the market. 12th Man, reading my thoughts, does take a share there. I imagine MJ Mill will as well. He is in. So 12th Man is selling out of the NYC, realizing that its track potential is limited currently. And MJ Mill is actually going to take a CNO. Crackpot takes one of his shares. APG looking towards the NYC, and 12th Man buying out the PRR. Will MJ Mill look towards the CNO again? I don't see why not. Looks like he will. Crackpot, only with money for the CNO and the NYC, picks the last CNO, so that will help that company float out of the brown, which is good for the other players. And MJ Mill with the last opportunity to buy here does take a B&O. So nobody floating a new presidency. Everybody's kind of content to sit with their current trains and hope to build up a little more net worth. This leaves Crackpot with the priority. He has no dump potential. The only dump potential in the game is the NYC onto MJ Mill. PRR actually linking the B&O player in, but not in the way that is helpful for the B&O really, because they're already tokened out of Lancaster. So B&O is probably hoping to get into the West. Instead, we'll be waiting until Brown for the opportunity. This does improve the PRR's run, and the PRR has 2 trains to run. B&O now, do we see them lay east into Philadelphia? No, instead they'll just upgrade Washington. So they have a 4-train run as a result of the link up with Lancaster, and they are going to pay that out. B&M still not upgrading New York, probably wanting New York, the NYC, to pay that upgrade cost. NYNH with 2 trains, also going to defer laying track and just sit on the $170. NYC does pay to upgrade New York, so NYNH and NYC and B&M are happy for the help. NYC just running for 80, still kind of struggling, and will be struggling for several more operating rounds, as its track opportunities are really pretty limited. Even when it gets to Rochester, that's only a $20 increase. So, maybe looking to start heading towards Chicago, as these players seem to be resisting upgrading at Reading. But now that New York has been upgraded, it becomes much more attractive since they have a $60 revenue center. But he will be heading towards New York, or to Chicago. Continuing to withholding with 80% of the company. May have been worried about leaving the orange section, but it does hurt to have so many withholds early in the game. You're limiting your growth potential. And if you were planning on withholding this much, why would you only pay 100 for the Camden and Amboy? I can't stop coming back to that. It's very confusing. B&O laying towards Philadelphia and does not token. There's no guarantee that that track ever leads into New York, so no reason to token it so early. We did see a PRR token on Philadelphia here. I missed that when it happened. That is not a great token, because just as for this slot may never go anywhere useful. B&M actually running into New York now. That has been upgraded by the NYC and will be paying out. PRR finally lays the Reading in Allentown and will have another run for its 3-train into New York now. NYNH, do we see him upgrade Albany? Looks like it. So he upgrades it to be friendly with the B&M and the NYNH, of course, which doesn't help the NYC at all. Actually, we'll take it another track turn now to get into Rochester. Looks like he's uninterested in going to Rochester, and instead will be heading to the CPR, or at least leaving the opportunity to head to the CPR. And he does not control the Champlain to St. Lawrence. The player that does not have priority, so the odds of the CPR being a suitcase are pretty high right now, unless the C&O player decides to lay some track in this operating round. So maybe some forethought from 12-man standing, hoping to get an early way into breaking that suitcase if it comes about. C&O player will be laying towards Toledo, so taking a kind of less direct route towards Chicago and paying the track cost to do it. He does pay out, which puts him in the yellow. He'll have to sell down a share to stay in orange here. And next stock round, Crackpot is sitting on a fair amount of cash, could be looking to sell out of the PRR C&O and start a new presidency. He will be doing MJ Mill a favor by selling the C&O, because that will put it back into the orange. but maybe not too worried about that. So instead, he will buy a B&M, and the PRR is now going. 12th man is paring the Erie quite high, doesn't have the liquidity to float that. We'll have to sell out of a lot of shares in order to get the $600 needed. And looks like he's going to start that process now before the other players have a chance to operate. Actually dumping the NYC on MJ Mill. So MJ Mill now has the CNO and the NYC. Both of these companies are in yellow or orange, and neither of them has a permanent or that much money. CNO has money for a 5 train if it has the opportunity to pick one up, but it's operating pretty late. So if the Erie pushes through into the 5s, unlikely that the CNO is going to be able to see one of those, as we're going to see the B&O, B&M, and PRR operating first, all of whom have, at least close to 5 train money. So if MJ Mill is looking for a 5 train, he's going to have to do some serious trashing in order to try and get one into the CNO, which is probably not going to be possible. He has to sell a share of the CNO, and we'll be buying a PRR. Crackpot now, buying his own shares. And APG, he's selling out now. Will he be taking the CPR? Looks like he will. So this is now very dangerous. 2 companies are floating, neither of which actually need trains, so they're safe to buy trains for their player and just push them through to hurt the companies with the train obligations. So this is looking like a very dangerous situation for all of these players. We will probably be seeing a bankruptcy here. The question is who will be going bankrupt, and who will win if there is a bankruptcy. So Crackpot is currently in the lead in terms of, actually no, sorry, 12th man standing is currently in the lead, but he is floating the Erie, so he's investing a lot of his net worth into a company that's not going to get any return and actually will hurt his net worth in the first operating round. So as a result of him falling back, he will be behind Crackpot in net worth. Crackpot has the NYNH and B&M. They both have 4 trains, so he's not going to go bankrupt on the 6. So he is looking okay here in terms of winning if there's a bankruptcy in the first operating round of the next set. APG has a 4 train and is floating his own company, so similarly his net worth is going to be falling back, so probably not going to take it if we see a bankruptcy. And MJ Mill has, well, he's probably the one that's at highest risk of going bankrupt with 3 trains and very little cash. So I think that a bankruptcy here may very well favor Crackpot, who could just pay out into other players going bankrupt and take the game. So with that analysis, I think if you're one of these other players starting these companies, you need to be very careful about pushing trains too hard, because if you're not in a position to win from a bankruptcy, you really don't want to bring one about by pushing trains. APG continuing his turn, and 12th man is floating the Erie as previously noted. Sorry, he actually buys an NYC. So the analysis that we just made was highlighting Crackpot as the possible winner in the event of a bankruptcy. 12th man may be noticing that as well and hoping to hurt his net worth, but the NYNH is already ledged, so not going to be too successful in that. Alternatively, he could just be buying a paying share, hoping that that share pays out and allows him to take the game from Crackpot. Crackpot, he is buying NYC shares. I think that if you're worried about a bankruptcy, you need to be buying more secure shares than a company that's operating basically last with 2, 3 trains. So these players are continuing to buy other players' companies. Um, it may be that 12th Man is just hoping to reserve the presidency of the Erie and has identified the fact that he is at risk of losing if there's bankruptcy. APG, though, looks like he's going to continue to float the CPR. And 12th Man is just buying paying shares. So maybe has realized that there may be a bankruptcy and is looking to, avoid pushing trains as a result, which I think is probably the right play for him. And Crackpot is taking cheap shares. Again, these shares may or may not pay out. The Erie not floating makes it much more likely that they will, but still a little bit risky to be buying these shares that may be sold down in a bankruptcy. 12th Man doing a little stock trashing, so we'll see if he is actually going to go back and start floating the Erie. CPR now floated, and he is buying paying shares still. APG selling his own share to buy a paying share and taking the B&O. So 12th Man is sitting on a bunch of cash, does have priority as a result of APG kind of rearranging his investment, but did not actually float the Erie. So if there is a bankruptcy, this is kind of even worse for 12th Man, as he's got a bunch of cash invested, which is not going to pay any dividends, and he's got two shares here that are not paying dividends either. So on the one hand, it's safe. It's not going to be hurt by other players selling down, but on the other hand, you're losing out on potential gains. So we'll see. If there is a bankruptcy, it should be pretty close. CPR laying tracks, so not going to be a suitcase. Probably realized that the NYC was going to be easy to get up there anyways. And buys the first 4. Does he buy the 5 here? He does. So we are kind of off to the races. 12th Man has money for a 5, and the B&O will be able to bring out the 6 potentially after the B&M. So could be looking at a quick bankruptcy here. Philadelphia and Trenton is laid and pays out. B&M upgrading Boston. B&O here. So all the 5 trains are gone. B&O, will he bring out the 6 train? APG is running the CPR. Will have 2 permanent trains if he does this, but needs to be looking towards MJ Mill here, who will be in quite dire straits if the 6 train comes out. APG is not in position to win this game if the bankruptcy occurs in this OR. So I think that this player may very well bring it out, but will lose the game if he does. He does finally get that west expansion for his track, lays a token, and will be bringing out the 6. So I think we have seen the last operating round of this game, and we will see who takes it. NYNH upgrading in order to maximize its run because he is in close competition with 12th Man. Paying out. NYC now has $0, so forced to buy from the market, can't shuffle trains, and didn't have a train really to shuffle anyways. So we will see him buy the first 6. He actually goes bankrupt on the first 6. So game is over, and 12th Man manages to take it. So despite by a single dollar, wow, that is a very close result. So 12th Man really kind of ran the risk of losing this game with some of the decisions he made in terms of leaving shares in the Erie and just sitting on his cash, but was able to eke out a victory over Crackpot. Crackpot had bought a bunch of those brown shares in the cheap companies and actually loses net worth as the bankrupt player sells down out of the companies. So if we go back into that stock round, Crackpot bought a bunch of these C&O shares, and when MJ Mill sold down, he lost value as a result, and he lost the game by a single dollar. So, just be aware that when you have an impending bankruptcy, little decisions can make a huge difference and cost you the game. That was an interesting, little analysis of a impending bankruptcy. I hope that will be useful to other people. And congratulations to 12th Man for eking out the victory. We'll be back in the future.